Hello and welcome to the ICU video NHL playoff play-in preview. My name is Wyatt Zieger on Twitter at Wyatt Zieger. Today joined alongside Brennan Klak on Twitter at NHL Update. And Brennan, we're going to be talking a little NHL playoffs. Excited to finally have these back after a long hiatus.
Yeah, it just feels like it's been such a long time. Like it's been months and months of waiting, but we're finally getting ready to come back, and it's very exciting.
Well, without further ado, let's jump into it. And for geographic reasons, being in the province of Alberta, let's start with the Edmonton Oilers versus Chicago Blackhawks. The Oilers finished the regular season 37-25-9. The Blackhawks were 32-30-8. Chicago did take the season series 2-1. I think one of the first things at this series that really jumps out the page to me is Edmonton's special teams. They finished the regular season with the league's best power play operating at nearly 30% and the second best PK at nearly 85%. How do the Blackhawks contain the special teams of the Edmonton Oilers?
They kind of don't. I mean, that's the whole thing with the Oilers' power play, is that it was absolutely borderline unstoppable during the season because of RNH and McDavid and Draisaitl. Those three guys are able to drive the play so well in the other team's zone and move the puck side to side so well, especially McDavid and Draisaitl together with their chemistry, that all they need is a guy like Neal or Chase on to be in front in the crease, and it seems to go in every single time. Chicago's penalty kill actually wasn't too bad this season. I believe it was 8th, but the Oilers are just a team that, with that much talent, are not going to be stopped, and it's going to lead to goals in this series no matter what.
Now, I think about a week ago, a lot of people would have said this would be kind of a close series. You have McDavid, Draisaitl, Kane, Taves. But now with the news that Corey Crawford is deemed unfit to play and may not suit up for Chicago, that leaves them with a bit of a crapshoot net between Subban and D'Elia. What do you see panning out over there in net for Chicago?
Well, Malcolm Subban would have the most NHL experience, and he actually has beaten the Oilers before as a member of the Vegas Golden Knights. So Subban has experience there, but it is a vast difference between Subban and Crawford. Crawford was one of the only reasons why Chicago's even here, because their team defense was absolutely terrible this season, and Crawford made save after save in tight. He had an excellent season. Without him, to me, it could be like a 2 or 3 game gap. Like it could go from a 5-game tight series to a 3-game sweep for the Oilers without Crawford. I think it's that detrimental to Chicago if he can't play.
When you look at the Oilers' goaltending situation, Mike Smith hasn't won a playoff round since 2011, 2012 with Arizona, and Mikko Koskinen has never seen playoff action. Does that give the Hawks a bit of a break, knowing that Crawford may not be in there, that the goaltending battle might not be as far apart as some think?
I don't really know if it gives Chicago too much of a break, just because I think Smith is a type of guy where he's a giant gamer. Like he's a giant believer of himself. And no, did Mike Smith have a great season? I mean, it was really inconsistent. He was very up, very down. In the last series he played against Chicago, the last game was a 4-3 loss where he was actually pulled after letting in 4. So from that standpoint, it's kind of a voodoo thing in terms of who you're going to pick. Smith, Koskinen, not sure which guy's going to take the reins, but the point is they have both, and they have 2 guys that have a nice rest. They've had 2 months to think about this. I think that both guys will be sharp to start, and therefore I don't think it changes the mindset for Chicago. I think they're just going to have to shoot the puck and hope, especially that mismatch of the third lines to me, where they have Dominique Kubalik and Kirby Dach facing the Oilers' bottom 6. That's going to be very key for them to do anything in this series.
We know a lot of stars are going to be featured in this, but who's a player that maybe flies under the radar you think it could make a pretty big impact on this series? And then I want you to give me your prediction for the series as well.
I think for the Oilers, Andreas Athanasiou, he's got to do something. They got 2 second-round picks for him. Like they traded those 2 to get him in. And he was injured. He wasn't really gelling with McDavid. He didn't really find his way. Well, he's going to be with Draisaitl and Yamamoto based on the practice lines that we have seen so far, but they're going to shuffle him around. They're going to try him in different areas, and he's the X factor with his speed. I do think that this is a tight series on paper if Crawford is playing, but even then, I don't see Chicago's defense being able to stop McDavid and Draisaitl. I don't think Duncan Keith is at the level he needs to be at his age in order to stop those 2. And therefore, I think the Oilers will take this series, even if it's in 5 games.
And I got myself within Oilers sweep in this one. I'm playing my cards pretty close to the chest, but I don't think Chicago really stands much of a chance. And I think they'd rather actually go for that first overall pick than anything else. Moving along, the next series we're staring down is Nashville Predators versus the Arizona Coyotes. Nashville is the 6th seed. Arizona is the 11th seed. Both teams are about average when it comes to scoring goals and keeping goals out of their net. But Arizona, obviously, they missed Kemper for a good chunk of the season, and he was a Vezina candidate kind of goalie. How do you see the goaltender duel faring out between the Predators and the Coyotes?
Well, Arizona obviously has the advantage to me because not only was Darcy Kemper lights out before his injury, but I think Antti Ranta is also a very quality goaltender. And you have both guys in there that, with such a long layoff, they might have both guys play in the series a game, but they wouldn't have much of a drop off, which is very nice. Whereas Nashville, Pekka Rinne just really struggled this season, especially on the penalty kill. His save percentage was in the 700s on the penalty kill. It was a nightmare season for him. And they did have to switch that out to UC Saros. I think Saros is a good goalie. He's not at their level, but it's quality enough that it doesn't create much of a mismatch. So it should be interesting to see guys that are relatively inexperienced in a playoff battle it out.
When you look at the offense of the Arizona Coyotes, Nick Schmaltz led that team with 45 points, Keller 44, Garland 39. They got a couple of big names on that team now, including Phil Kessel, someone they picked up in the offseason. He only had 38 points before the stoppage of the season. Is it fair to say that it was kind of a disappointing start from the forwards, or do you expect them in this playoff series to start clicking together?
Well, the group as a whole does have the name value and the past experience, and Derek Stepan has scored in a Game 7. Taylor Hall was actually really good for the Devils in their first-round series against Tampa Bay. Phil Kessel probably should have won the Conn Smythe over Sidney Crosby a couple of years ago. But as a whole, I would agree that they were very disappointing. And Phil Kessel claims he was injured for parts of the season. I don't know how bad that would have affected his play, but overall, it's just sometimes the way the Coyotes play the game. They don't really play a jumpstart offensive. They're very defensively shut down kind of a team. And when it comes to, and their power play is not that special either. So when you put all those things together, even with the names they have, it's just the system that Rick Tocchet puts in place. It doesn't really give them that chance to really rise up. And other than Connor Garland, who I thought had an excellent season, everyone kind of underperformed. I'm not sure if that changes in the playoffs. It's kind of a tight turnaround for everyone to just find their mojo.
Flipping to the other side, the Nashville Predators defense has been a staple of that team for the better part of 2 decades now. They were led in points by their captain, Roman Josi, with 65. Ellis finished with 38, Ekholm 33, and they've also got a staple of younger players like Fabro coming up, and they've also got some veteran leadership like Hamhuis, Weber, Tenorti, and Holzer. Is it fair to say that Nashville has one of the deepest defense of any team in this play-in series?
I don't know how deep it actually is based on this season. Like Roman Josi and Ryan Ellis, those two guys were absolutely fantastic this season. And Ryan Ellis is becoming one of the more underrated D-men in the league, if not the most underrated D-man in the league, because Ryan Ellis is a extremely quality guy and player. But after Josi and Ellis, there was some concern this year with the play of Mattias Ekholm, who had been fantastic for Nashville, but this season was a little bit down, a little bit off, and it started in last year's playoff against Dallas. And then after that top three, it does drop off. I don't think Dante Fabro is quite there yet. I do think that Dan Hamhuis is at the end of his road in his career. And if you look across at Arizona, I think they actually might have a deeper defense. They've got Alex Goligoski, Jason Demers, Jacob Chychrun, Nicholas Hjalmarsson, all those guys after Oliver Ekman-Larsson, where at least one of those quality guys will be on the bottom pair. And I think all of them are still guys that can take minutes. So they might actually be a little deeper than Nashville, but they're not touching the quality of Josi and Ellis.
Do you have a prediction for the series?
I'm going to go with Nashville in 5, but at this point, it's really tough to say because Nashville, you never know who's going to show up. Will Philip Forsberg and Ryan Johansson have big series? Will Matt Duchene come in the clutch? Like a lot of guys on Nashville have always been guys where you're like, I don't know if they're going to be there. And the thing is that Darcy Kemper is that type of goalie to be an X factor. And I do think that Taylor Hall is going to be playing for a contract. So this is going to be a really tight series. All the games are in the afternoon, so you can, skip your lunch break or try to sneak them through during work. But overall, I think Nashville just has a slightly better experienced team, but it's a real big toss-up to me.
I also have this one going the distance like you did, except for I'm going to disagree with you. I'm going to take Arizona in 5. I think Darcy Kemper, when he was healthy, was a top 3 Vezina quality goaltender. And I think that the problems in net in Nashville and head coach John Hines not really being that familiar with his players being hired in season, I think could lead to a shorter leash and some odd mistakes. So I'm going to take Arizona, but just a nose. And moving on now, it's the Vancouver Canucks versus the Minnesota Wild. Vancouver is the 7 seed. Minnesota is the 10 seed. Vancouver had no problem putting pucks in the back of the net this year. They scored 224 goals, and they were led by JT Miller. Now, if I was to tell you at the beginning of the year that JT Miller was leading the Canucks in scoring, what would you would have thought happened to Pettersson, Horvat, and Besser?
I honestly don't know. JT Miller was always a good complimentary player, but man, was his season good this year. It was just night and day of different kind of player. But saying that, when you look at Vancouver's offensive lines as a whole, I think Tyler Toffoli was a must add for them. They needed him. They've got Brock Besser, who is obviously excellent, and he's kind of playing on first or second line at this point. Probably going to start in the second line so that Toffoli gets to play with Pettersson. I don't love their depth, though. I think there's potential with some of those guys, with Gaudette and Virtanen. But I look at Minnesota, and they do have a lot of good veteran leadership coming in. Mikko Koivu should be back and healthy. You have Zuccarello, you have Eric Stahl, Zach Parise. And on top of those veterans, I also think that Kevin Fiala completely elevated his level of play at the end of the season to very star status. Fiala is now one of the most underrated guys, definitely in the league. So maybe as a whole, I might actually take Minnesota's forward core. But JT Miller was a big part of why Vancouver's top line is now extremely dangerous.
Mentioned Fiala there, 23 goals, 31 assists. He led the Wild in scoring with 54 points. Does speed worry you at all if you're Minnesota? Vancouver is a very quick team and a very quick transitioning team, especially with Calder nominee Quinn Hughes on that back end. Does that scare you at all if you're Minnesota? And how do you plan to keep up with the young guns?
I don't know if it completely scares me, frankly, because to me, what scares me the most is just Elias Pettersson because of his two-way ability and overall just beastly nature, because he doesn't look like a beast. Elias Pettersson is a beanpole. You never expect it from the guy. Then he comes out and he just demolishes your team. He's got one of the best shots in the league. But in terms of team speed, I don't think Jared Spurgeon is a slow guy. I don't think Matt Dumba is a slow guy. Their defense can probably keep up for the most part, and Ryan Suter just keeps doing what his thing. Ryan Suter is one of the guys that just goes under the radar as well, because he's in Minnesota's number 1 D for so long now, and it's still very quality play coming out of him. Vancouver, though, that youthful jump is going to help them in terms of the energy that they've had over the last 2 months and waiting to come back, but I'm not sure if that's going to be the biggest factor in this series. The biggest factor, and I'll let you kind of transition into this, is going to be the goaltending.
And you do make a very good point. Devin Dubnyk last year, he only had a 30% quality start in net. They really had to split time with Alex Stalock, who, if you have to Google that name back at home, lets you know where the Minnesota Wild are at as far as goaltending goes. And on the flip side, Jacob Markstrom was the MVP for Vancouver this season. He had a tremendous showing, so I easily give the edge to Van in net. But what do you think about Dubnyk? Does he have a chance to come back? And I'm going to get you a series prediction out of you as well.
I'm not even sure if they go with Devin Dubnyk, because I think that this is going to be a camp battle. I think Minnesota is looking at all 3 goalies and trying to figure out which guy is going to give us the best chance, because Dean Evason's not really married to any goaltenders. He was just named head coach after being the interim to end the season, and he can go with whatever guy he wants. So Devin Dubnyk might have the lead on experience, but Alex Stalock had an excellent end of the season. And don't sleep on Kaapo Kakkonen either, because he just won AHL Goalie of the Year, and he's a very promising guy too. But all 3 of those options don't even really touch what Jacob Markstrom is to Vancouver. And because of that, even though I think Minnesota's got a better defense overall, even though I like their experience up front, I think about that power play Vancouver has, and Pettersson and Besser and now Toffoli and Miller and Hughes, of course, those guys against Minnesota's goaltending. I got to say Vancouver in 5.
I also have Vancouver taking this series. I also they do it in 4 games. I just think they can overwhelm the Minnesota Wild, and I think they'll be able to do it quite easily. Jumping along now, another Alberta battle here. It's the Calgary Flames. They finished the season 36-27-7. They take on the Winnipeg Jets, who are the 9 seed. They were 37-20-6. These teams met only once during the regular season. Winnipeg took that meeting 3-1. Looking at these two teams, is there anything that really stands out to you as far as what might be an X factor in this matchup?
Well, the immediate X factor is the change in goaltending, because Winnipeg might have the Vezina winner, and for my money, the Vezina winner, Connor Hellebuyck, in net. And Connor Hellebuyck was the reason why that Jets defense, which on paper looks so porous, was able to withstand all the pressure. But even then, like, the Jets D still got exposed. Hellebuyck was the reason why they didn't get killed 8-5 every night, because he was sensational. And I look at Calgary's crease, and David Rittich is very okay. Cam Talbot actually had a pretty nice season, but it's still Cam Talbot, where you don't know exactly what you're getting coming into this plan from him. So that's the biggest X factor to me. When I look at Calgary, though, this could be Johnny Gaudreau's last ride. I mean, this core of the Flames has been together for a long time now, and they haven't gotten anything done. They had that extremely talented team last year that got upset. And I think of Johnny G and Monahan, and it's like, this is go time. Like, this is the moment that they have to really come out and bring this team somewhere, because if they don't, Brad Treliving's job's on the line, and he's going to have to figure something out. And that might involve moving Johnny G out.
How big of a piece do you think Tkachuk is going to play in this series? And do you think he'll be able to get under the skin of the Winnipeg Jets, or are they going to roll that off like water down a duck's back, because it is the playoffs and nobody wants to spend any time in the sin bin when they could be helping their team?
You know, the Jets are a pretty big team in terms of size. So Tkachuk actually has his work cut out for him, because you're not going to be bowling over Blake Wheeler. You're not bowling over Patrick Laine. So he might bother a couple of them, just because Tkachuk is one of the best in the league at getting under someone's skin, and he's going to be in the scrums, and he's going to be trying to start an effort to get them annoyed. But Winnipeg's one of those teams where all they have to do is have one shot and it might go in. Like, guys like Kyle Connor just snipe it in at any second. They don't even need possession. So Tkachuk's got to be a bit careful, and that also goes to Lucic and anybody on the Flames that wants to start a kerfuffle, because I don't really want to play the Jets power play in the playoff. I think they're going to be motivated, and those shooters against David Rittich, that could be a problem.
I think one problem I see when you look at the Jets side, and you kind of touched on it, the loss of Dustin Byfuglien to start the year all but defueled the Jets. Neil Pionk, credit to him, at 45 points this season, really came out of nowhere and really proved himself. And then you have Josh Morrissey, but as you look down there, Pullman, Kulikov, Boteto, these names don't really jump off the page at you or put fear in your heart. Do you think that Winnipeg's defense is going to be good enough to take down the Calgary Flames? And can I get a series prediction?
I think that defense will be a problem later. I think when they play really quality teams, they're going to be exposed there, and Hellebuyck can only do so much. But the Calgary Flames have enough questions of their own up front. I love Michael Backlund, and he's going to be really hard to as a checking forward in this series. It's going to be tough. He'll be matched up against the top line of the Jets at all times. It'll be him versus Mark Scheifele, I think, as they try to get Monahan away to have them have more offensive opportunities. But from what I know, the Jets have been gamers in the playoffs. The Flames have not. I can only go from what I've seen before, and because of that, I have to say the Jets in 4. There's just too much goaltending difference, and I believe in the Jets core, and I don't believe in the Flames core. This is a huge. I can't stress how huge of a series this is for Johnny Gaudreau. He has to be a point per game player. He has to score a clutch goal. This is his moment.
noticing a bit of a trend when it comes to the West and maybe when it comes to all playoffs. And it's really goaltending does make the difference. And for that reason, I as well, I'm going to take the Jets. I'm going to say they get it done in 5 games because I think Calgary is a very resilient squad. But Connor Hellebuck is going to make the difference for Winnipeg, and I think he gets them that series win. All right, well, thank you for watching. That was our preview for the West play-in series. Tune in next time when we'll be covering the Eastern Conference. Brennan, thanks for being with me, man.
It's a pleasure, Wyatt.